the last character that we're going to read and take notes on is the pardoner. And you can see I already have some notes over here to the side. The pardoner worked for the church. He was given permission to grant pardons. So the Pope, who was head of the church, gave pardoners permission to grant pardons. Now, the way you've heard pardons before is like a pardon from some type of criminal offense, a legal pardon. But in the Middle Ages, people in the common society, if they sinned, they were taught that they had to go through the church, they had to receive a pardon from the church to have their sins forgiven. So being granted a pardon was basically being forgiven for your sin. So whenever it says he had permission to grant pardons, what people could do is they could confess their sin to a pardoner, and that pardoner would give them a piece of paper called an indulgence, and it was sealed. It was sealed by the Pope, and it granted forgiveness for their sins. Now, that a pardoner was not supposed to take money for pardons, but you're going to see that there were many pardoners like this pardoner who took advantage of selling pardons. So as we get that, so keep that in mind, that they're not supposed to sell and have personal gain from granting those pardons. All right, I'm going to take this off so that we have time, we have room for our notes. All right, so let's go through. And the first section that we're going to read we're just going to read to this part right here.
He and the gentle pardoner rode together, a bird from Charing Cross of the same feather, just back from visiting the court of Rome. He loudly sang, "Come hither, love, come home." The summoner sang deep seconds to this song. No trumpet ever sounded half so strong. This pardoner had hair as yellow as wax, hanging down smoothly, like a hank of flax. In driblets fell his locks behind his head, down to his shoulder, which they overspread. Thinly they fell, like rat-tails, one by one.
All right, so really what I'm looking at just mainly is this part right here. It's talking about, so we have a description of his hair, which seems odd, but look at how he describes his hair and the imagery that he uses to start telling us what the pardoner is like. One thing that I really want to point out here, it says, thinly they fell like rat tails one by one. And what type of figurative language is this? If it's comparing his hair to rat tails and it's using like, that's called a simile, right? So the simile is that his hair is being compared to rat tails. And this may not seem like a big deal, but if he's choosing to compare his hair to rat tails, let's think about what he's trying to tell us. Whenever you hear rat, what do you think of? Or if someone says, "Oh, he's a dirty rat," what do you think of about that person? You can think dirty, right? What else do you know about rats? That they can kind of scoot around, so they're sneaky. If you say someone is a rat, oh, that old dirty rat, they're dirty, they're sneaky, they're untrustworthy. All right, so just from this simile, where he compares the pardoner's hair to rat tails, we can start to get this idea that the pardoner is dirty, sneaky, untrustworthy. Even, I've read this before, so I'm kind of helping lead you to that point. But even if you didn't have me saying, this can start to show us that he's dirty, sneaky, and untrustworthy, you should pick up from that simile that these are very negative connotations. This is negative imagery. And you can always go back and start to pick that up. Okay, so let's move down a little bit further.
He wore no hood upon his head for fun. The hood inside his wallet had been stowed. He aimed at riding in the latest mode. But for a little cap his head was bare, and he had bulging eyeballs like a hare. He'd sewed a holy relic on his cap. His wallet lay before him on his lap, brimful of pardons come from Rome, all hot. He had the same small voice a goat has got. His chin no beard had harboured, nor would harbour. Smoother than ever chin was left by barber. I judge he was a gelding or a mare.
All right, so a few things that I want to point out. I'm not going to point out every little thing, but a few things I want to point out. Where it says he aimed at riding in the latest mode, this just means that he wanted to have the nicest and the most up-to-date fashion. So he wanted the latest fashion. Which, think about how this is different from the parson. When we read the parson, we didn't really get any description about his clothing. Then you go to the pardoner, and his goal, he aimed at riding in the latest mode. So his goal was to have the latest fashion. Well, what does that mean? That means money, right? Because if you're going to have the newest and the nicest fashions, then that's going to cost you some money. All right, on the bulging eyeballs, if you've never heard of physiognomic, it's this idea that you can tell someone's character by their outward appearance. And so the bulging eyeballs may be a hint. This may be a hint of what kind of person he is. We're going to read a little bit further, and then we'll come back to those bulging eyeballs, and we'll think, okay, well, what might this be telling us about him? All right, so let's keep that in mind. Go to the next line. It says he sewed a holy relic on his cap, and a relic is an artifact. So he has these holy artifacts, and he has one sewn onto his cap. This next part, it says a wallet lay before him on his lap, brimful of pardons, come from Rome, all hot. Now, all hot, it could mean two things. Number one, it can mean that they're all fresh, which would tell you he's already sold a lot and he just got a lot more. So he's got all these new pardons. But then some people have also said that, hey, do you think this could mean that he stole them? They're not, that he wasn't really supposed to have them? I don't know. All right, and then the next few lines, I have underlined three things. He had the same small voice a goat has got, so like a small high-pitched voice. It says his chin no beard had harbored nor would harbor, so he's very smooth face. And he says, I judge he was a gelding or a mare. And if you don't know what a gelding or a mare is, a gelding is a male horse that doesn't have all of his male parts. So he's trying to say that the partner seems a little feminine. And he gives us these details about the same small voice a goat has got, very smooth face, and then I judge he was a gelding or a mare. So it's saying he's very feminine. All right, so what have we gotten so far? We got at the top where it kind of talks about his hair being kind of dirty, kind of making us think that maybe he's a little untrustworthy. Then we get to this part. His aim was riding in the latest mode, so he wanted the latest fashion, which is going to cost some money. We're going to go back and look at those bulging eyeballs in a little bit. The holy relic, that's going to come to play in just a second. And then we get the details that point to the fact that the narrator felt like the pardoner was a little feminine. As we read this next part, I want you to really focus in on what the narrator notices about the pardoner's relics.
As to his trade from Berwick down to Ware, there was no pardoner of equal grace. For in his trunk he had a pillow-case which he asserted was Our Lady's veil. He said he had a gobbet of the sail St. Peter had the time when he made bold to walk the waves, till Jesu Christ took hold. He had a cross of metal set with stones, and in a glass a rubble of pig's bones. And with these relics, any time he found some poor up-country parson to astound, on one short day, in money down, he drew more than the parson in a month or two, and by his flatteries and prevarication made monkeys of the priest and congregation.
All right, so as we read, I underlined a few things. So one that I want to get, it says he had a pillowcase which he asserted was Our Lady's veil. So Our Lady is Mary, is the Virgin Mary, okay? So what do you notice about this? It says he asserted that it was Mary's veil, that it was Our Lady's veil, but what is it really? It's really a pillowcase. So it's really a pillowcase. So what are you starting to find out about the pardoner? We're starting to realize that he is a con man. They're fake relics, all right? Then we get this part right here that says he said, and I'm gonna put that in quotes. He said he had a gobbet of the sail from St. Peter whenever he walked on the waves to Jesus. Now, think about this. It's a very small detail, but if someone were to ask you something about someone else, like for instance, okay, here's an example. Let's say that Mr. Campbell comes to me and he's like, hey, where was little Johnny during your class? And my response to him was, well, he said he was in the history teacher's room making up a test. Or I could say, he was in the history teacher's room making up a test. Which one is more believable? If I said he said, then that means I don't really believe him. Whereas if I can say he was here, that means that I believe him. So using the word said, he said he had a gobbet, means that the narrator does not really believe that that was a piece of the sail. All right, and then down here, and in a glass, a rubble of pig's bones. Y'all are going to be kind of freaked out by this, but it was not uncommon for people who were high-ranking in the church to have the remains of saints. And so this part of a rubble of pig's bones, he's probably trying to pass it off as like some fancy remains of saints. But the narrator can tell it's just a rubble of pig's bones, but he's probably trying to pass it off as some holy relics. So what do we get from this? We get, the important part here is to get that the relics are fake. They're not real, okay? So what does the fact that these are fake relics, what are we getting here about this? We're getting that the pardoner is a con man. He's a con man, right? Because he's going around and he is, he's telling everybody that he has these relics to impress people and to make people believe him and think that he's high up. But in reality, they're fake, and the narrator can tell that. But let's look at this part right here. This is really important. It says, and with these relics, anytime he found some poor up-country parson to astound. In one short day in money down, he drew more than the parson in a month or two. And by his flatteries and prevarication made monkeys of the priest and congregation. Okay, so he was able to go in to these small towns, and by his, he would flatter them with all of these fake relics, and he would trick them, and he was very conniving. And it says that he made monkeys of the priest and congregation. So what does it mean by he made monkeys of the priest and congregation? He made them look like fools, right? So he made fools of them because he was able to go in and trick all of these people, and they would give him so much money. In one day he could get more than the parson in a month or two. So he was going in and he was conning these people out of their money. All right, so we're starting to see a little bit about what kind of person the parson is. So let's look at this last little bit.
But still, to do him justice, first and last, in church he was a noble ecclesiast. How well he read a lesson or told a story! But best of all, he sang an offertory, for well he knew that when that song was sung he'd have to preach and tune his honey tongue, and well he could win silver from the crowd. That's why he sang so merrily and loud.
All right, so we get this last little bit about the pardoner. He says that he was really good at reading lessons, telling stories, but what was he best at? He was best at singing the offertory. So what is the offertory? What are you doing when you sing an offertory? You're taking up money, right? So you're taking up money. And that's what he was best at. Why was he best at taking up money? Because that was his whole goal. That's why he did everything that he did, was to get money. And it says when he knew when that song was finished, he was going to get silver. And that's why he sang so merrily and loud. So this really drives home the point that he wants the money, right? That it's all about greed. All right, so we really find out a lot about the pardoner, what kind of person he is, and the fact that we get that little bit, those little bit of details from the beginning that make us start thinking, okay, the way he's describing him here in the beginning is really showing that the narrator has a negative perception of the pardoner. Now, I've gone back up because I said earlier, we're going to come back to this when we get to the end. And this is something that you might want to do as you read very complex text, is you might want to say, well, now that I know the full picture, is there something else that I might have missed? So we go back up to the bulging eyeballs like a hare. And what you can get from this is that maybe he wants and he desires what he sees. And so he has that, as he's looking and seeing, that's what we're getting from that. So that really kind of gives us a majority of what we know about the pardoner. We have a little bit more to read about the pardoner. It's going to be the pardoner's prologue, and we're actually going to read the pardoner's tale. In the pardoner's prologue to his tale, we learn a little bit more about what kind of person he is, and it's really going to drive home everything that we just learned about him from this portion of the narrator's description. So make sure that you get your notes. If you didn't get your notes in your notebook, and then you might want to go back through and get those down.